This week, we welcome Dr. Eric Cole, the founder and CEO of Secure Anchor Consulting, for an interview. In the technical segment, our very own Joff Fire will be demonstrating some syntax with PowerShell useful for transferring data into a network while pen testing. In the security news, 2 code execution flaws are patched in Drupal. 773 million records are exposed in a massive data breach. Not really. We'll talk about it. Prices for zero-day exploits are on the rise. New attacks against PHP frameworks, and Microsoft launches a new Azure DevOps bug bounty program. All that and more on this episode of Paul's Security Weekly.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things getting sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul's Security Weekly. NetSparker, the developers of desktop and cloud-based web application security scanners that enable you to automatically identify vulnerabilities in your web applications and web services. NetSparker scanners employ a unique and dead-accurate vulnerability scanning engine that automatically verifies vulnerabilities with their proof of concept. For more information, visit them on the web at netsparker.com or email at contact@netsparker.com. Organizations' internal networks are overly permissive and can't distinguish trusted from untrusted applications. Attackers abuse this condition to move laterally through networks, bypassing address-based controls to spread malware. Edgewise abstracts security policies away from traditional network controls that rely on IP addresses, ports, and protocols, and instead ties controls directly to applications. Edgewise allows organizations to analyze the network attack surface and segment workloads based on the software and how it's communicating. Edgewise monitors applications and protects data paths using zero-trust segmentation. Visit edgewise.net/securityweekly to get your free month of visibility. Some restrictions apply.
Because the farm animals were mostly unharmed, love is merely a chemical reaction, and they lifted the restraining order, Paul is back in the high life again.
Welcome to Paul's Security Weekly. This is episode 590. We're recording on January 17th, 2019 in G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island. Let's see, to my left, Dr. Doug. We have 2 doctors on the show.
Ooh, doctor.
Doctor? What's going on?
I'm back, yeah.
What is your show?
It's straight out of C-137.
What's...
C-137 is, that's the universe that Rick lives in now.
Oh.
Yeah, straight out of C-137.
Just outstanding.
I tell you.
We got some nerd T-shirts going on.
No, this is the nerd. Yeah, I mean, it's like once you get the Hitchhiker's Guide stuff comes out, it's like you have no more friends.
Yeah, pretty much.
You will not date again.
I got this T-shirt, an R2-D2 French press, and a scarf that has binary numbers all around it. Yeah. And if you translate it to ask you like I did, it spells geek.
Yeah. So all of that spells geek.
Yeah,
so
I was like, wow.
You don't even need the scarf with the binary on it. Pretty much when you're carrying the R2-D2 French press, everybody's got the whole picture out. Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah.
On the lines remotely, Mr. Joff Thayer is here with us. Joff, welcome.
G'day, Paul. How are you? You guys sound like a sideband radio right now, but audio is kind of interesting from this end, but I hope I sound okay.
You sound great, Joff.
Well, brilliant.
So
it's good to be here.
Keep talking, because you sound so good.
I mean, it's like sexy up here.
No, I'm just kidding. Mr. Lee Neely is here on the program. Lee, welcome.
Oh, good to be here. We're in Livermore today instead of Idaho. I'm kind of out of sorts. I don't know why it's not snowing outside.
Lee, do you have an organ in your office? What is that in the background?
No, those are actually radiator steam pipes.
Oh.
That is a radiator against the wall. 2 of the pipes are for hot, 2 of the pipes are for cold.
Interesting.
I like
all
it better
of them
as
are
a
radioactive.
They used to have a sign on them that said to the effect, "Don't lick these pipes. There's asbestos in here."
Very, very nice.
That sign was no longer PC and got removed.
But
liked
the
it.
asbestos is still there.
But they left all the asbestos.
It's skillfully protected by 3 layers of paint. What are you worried
right?
about?
It's fine.
Lead paint.
It's totally fine.
Well,
They
duh.
don't get hot or anything, and the paint chips off. So, quick announcement: the RSA Conference 2019, of course, is the place to be for the latest in cybersecurity data innovation and thought leadership. March 4th through the 8th is when it's happening. Make sure that you go to rsaconference.com/securityweekly-US19. Use the discount code 5UNIFORM.
Uniform.
9 Sierra Whiskey Foxtrot Delta to receive $100 off a conference.
Did you just say one hump?
One hump. My lady lumps of humps. Right. That's I was.
God. That's it for us then.
It's good. Scythe.io/Security Weekly. We can't forget our sponsor, Scythe.
no,
Bryson was on the show last week. Now, what's nice is that Bryson gave the demo of the product last night. John Strand says it saves them half time or 10 times less than what it takes. When he implemented this tool, it's like what used to take 10 days now takes 1 day because all of these tools are in there. So you take John's word for it. You can go watch the demo from last week, and then you can go to scythe.io/Security Weekly and get a free trial, which is new. Bryson didn't always give out a free trial. Now you can get a free trial.
Yeah, I did. I got it. It's nice.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And what's that URL again, Doug?
The hump?
Yeah. It is scythe.io/Security Weekly, Doug. Come on.
Okay, no, I know.
Keep up now.
I don't have a teleprompter.
I wasn't even looking at the teleprompter anyway.
My teleprompter just says, tell Paul to lick the pipe.
Yeah. I read whatever's on the teleprompter.
That's right.
Just like Burgundy.
That's right.
Oh, he listens to directions, all right.
That's right. Dr. Eric Cole is the leading cybersecurity expert in the world, known as the go-to for major political and business power players. Wow, this is a fabulous introduction, Eric. I didn't write it. I couldn't claim credit for that. A highly esteemed authority in the space, Dr. Cole is best positioned to help individuals and companies of any size to protect themselves from security breaches, identify theft, and blackmail. Dr. Eric Cole, welcome back to Security Weekly.
What? Always a pleasure, man. I want to know who wrote that background for me. That sounds pretty. It makes me sound important.
It does. It's fabulous. It's fabulous. Now, Eric, what I want to point out for our viewers and inform our listeners is that when you said you were in an undisclosed location in downtown Los Angeles and you panned your camera in the background, and I said, wait, go back to that. I'm like, that hotel. What is that hotel? They filmed a movie there. I think it was True Lies. I'm like, but more importantly, at the top of that very hotel that you're looking at right now is where we recorded episode 1 of this podcast in 2005. And so that is the Westin Bonaventure Hotel. And it was, we were supposed to be at New Orleans. We were going to a SANS conference, supposed to be in New Orleans, but Hurricane Katrina had hit New Orleans. So before Katrina even hit, they had moved it to the Westin Bonaventure in Los Angeles. It's one of very few times I've been to LA. It was a lot of fun. And those are some useless facts for all of our listeners.
I was in a van. I was in a van fleeing that day.
Right?
I was fleeing Houston.
Oh, boy. So, Eric, Eric, you and I got to know each other through SANS, actually. We did a lot of fun things together at SANS. I don't think you ever lit me on fire, but anyway. But now you've moved on. You're doing some different things. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so I'm sort of on this mission to really help organizations and people be safe in cyberspace. So I'm doing a few cool things. One of them that we've launched last year that's getting a lot of traction is Cyber Bodyguard, where basically you have professional athletes, politicians. Well, I don't like them right now, so screw them. But Hollywood stars and folks like that. That's the reason being in LA that basically are targeted, and on their cell phone, they could potentially have pictures, information, or things like that. So we provide services that basically allow them to be safe, protected, and communicate properly in cyberspace. The other cool thing is
hold on, Eric. I have to say, That is
Okay.
that is like one of my dream jobs. It's something that I've thought of because I said, you have all these celebrities, especially when the leaks, a lot of these leaks first came out.
Yeah.
I'm like, and then, you see Kanye West in the president's office and you realize they're poor OPSEC. And I'm like, wouldn't it be cool to have a consulting company where we get to work with all these
Yeah,
celebrities
it's a
and,
great
and
idea.
political figures and help them be secure?
Yeah.
Because they're targets. That'd be really cool. And Eric, you've lived out my dream, man. I'll live out my dream through you. How about that?
Well, if you want to come on a gig, man, you let me know who you want to meet, and I'll hook you up, man.
I may take you up on that.
We're all going to take you up on that.
I'll have
Oh,
some
wait,
pretty
wait,
valuable
wait.
security advice, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. These nude photos here should be removed. Let me just take care of that for you.
No, see, you're missing it. They want to do their nude photos, so you have to show them how to do nude photos in a secure, protected manner.
Oh, there you go.
Don't, you don't tell them no. You show them how to do it correctly.
There
Right,
you go.
yeah.
Let me take that for you.
I mean, but you joke, but I can see that being
No,
being
you're
the case,
absolutely
right? Is they want to
first
be
world
able
problems,
to do
man.
things and
Yeah.
go on Twitter and all that stuff. And I mean, that's a hard job. It kind of reminds me of working in a university. Like students have to learn,
Yeah.
has to be an open environment. It's pretty similar.
Paul's going to get Kanye, I can tell.
Yeah.
No, but you're right. What I love about it is the ultimate in creativity because they're telling you their functionality. They're going to go on these sites. They're going to take these pictures.
Right.
They're going to do these
Yeah.
posts, and you can't stop them. But you have to figure out how to take their device and transparently allow them to do it in a secure manner. So it's sort of like the ultimate chess match.
Right. What are some of the techniques, without obviously giving anything away, Eric, that you would recommend kind of at a high level for celebrities or those that, maybe a target?
Well, the first one is probably very obvious, but it's probably the most important. Don't take naked pictures of yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, man.
Right.
That's sort of the obvious one. But what we do there is a lot of it has to do with wiping their systems because a lot of them folks will take silly pictures and they'll send them to somebody for the moment and they don't want them to exist long term. So what we'll do is we'll have programs running in the background that securely wipe anything off their system. Also, there are programs like Instagram that actually are much more secure that when you send pictures, they actually don't allow you to take screen captures. They put a lot of other controls on the person's system to minimize blackmailing, framing, and things like that.
Wow, that's interesting. I'm not a big Instagram user. I could never latch onto it. Do you have to use some of these to understand their security models, Eric?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's where I jokingly say, but my teenage daughters are my best consultants in doing this because they know more about this shit than I do.
Right.
It's scary.
That's all. So hit me up on IG,
No, I did a case. I did a case not too long ago for the police, and my daughter, I had her friends, so I was consulting with them. It was like, if you were going to do this, how would you do it? And I got really good answers from them because they were like right on top of that.
But obviously, passwords are very important, Eric. And two-factor is also important. How do you make that usable for people? Because I still think as an industry in general, we struggle with that.
Yeah.
And once again, this is one of those where some security professionals don't like my answer because it's not 100% secure, but it's still a lot better than just using the password, just to actually utilize the random password generator in the iPhone, where when you go to a site, it will actually generate a long, complex password. Now, yes, it's stored on the device, but the problem with a lot of these folks that are targeted, they have the exact same password for every account, their voicemail, everything out there. And it's usually something like Bubba53 or something silly. So the trick is really just make it harder and more difficult for targets to be able to get information.
Yeah. That's awesome. And now, are these like ongoing engagements, right? Because I mean, it never really stops, right?
Right. So we engage in two ways. Of course, our preferred method is an ongoing subscription. So essentially, we go in and we do initial consultation. We'll set their devices up, set up their homes, their Wi-Fi. Because that's the other thing that cracks me up is these people get these Wi-Fis and they're lied to, saying that if you plug it in out of the box, it's secure and protected. And we all know that's a bunch of crap. So we'll basically do an initial configuration, set everything up, and then essentially we'll do monthly monitoring. We'll keep an eye on what they're doing. We also keep an eye on the news, different channels, because, if certain things break or certain teams make it to certain events, they're going to be higher profile. So we just sort of keep an eye on them. And then if they are in that position, we'll give them advice. And then if they get in a bad spot, we'll then, of course, help to try to clean up and minimize damage from an electronic perspective.
So do you have like a SOC team that's working to do some of the monitoring?
Yes. So we have a few guys like me that can dress up and look nice and pretty because you got to wear suits. That's the only thing, Paul. If you come with me, you're going to have to break out a suit. Man.
I'll
you
wear
don't need
a suit.
a tie,
Yeah,
but
totally
you need a
fine.
suit, man.
Absolutely.
But yes, that's the funny part is because a lot of my really smart techie guys, I love them and they're awesome, and I'll tell them this. I would never, ever put them in front of a client because they just have no personal skills, but they're brilliant behind the scenes. So, I have a whole team of guys that are monitoring, watching, supporting. And then the other thing that amazes me is a lot of people don't realize there's no delete button on the internet. Like a lot of these folks think you put something stupid out there. Well, I'll just go in and delete it off of Facebook and it's gone forever. And they don't realize that stuff is replicated and can still be found, discovered, and harvested from other sources.
Can I just hire you to go with me? So when I'm going out, you have somebody that actually goes with me to when I start doing stupid stuff and that advises me on that.
Looks over your shoulder.
Well, yeah, that's going. You see those lines of coke? Like, maybe not. You know, like, at least take the camera away. You know, like let's not live tweet this. Like,
it's like a life coach.
Well, we joke with that, but one of the advice I do, and I can't name who it is, but it's somebody who tends to get into a lot of trouble.
Paul.
And basically what I told them was, listen, when people come to your house for a party, your bodyguard collects all their cell phones. And just like, you know how you collect keys when people are drinking and you don't give them the keys? Well, you collect cell phones and don't let anybody take pictures when you're at a party.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. Well, because it was it Dr. Dre that video got on Facebook right as the deal with Apple was happening? And like it was like they were worried the deal was going to fall through.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I mean, you think of that of how many professional athletes or professional figures have lost endorsements, have lost money, or have been suspended for things they've done online or things that have inadvertently been posted on their behalf.
So I have a question. That is, why do you think the belief persists that you can clean up what's online? You can. There is a delete button for the internet. I mean, we know better, but why do we think the general public doesn't? Or is there no answer?
No, I think it's just a general education that people love technology. Functionality always leads, but security lags. So people just assume that, hey, in the real world, if I have a picture and I burn it, the picture's gone. So people assign the same logic to cyberspace, thinking, well, if I post a picture and I delete it, it must be gone in the same manner, because they just don't understand how the technology really works. And I mean, probably a best example of that is if you watch the congressional hearings, when Congress went in and Zuckerberg testified. I mean, those guys have no freaking clue how a computer works. I mean, so I was laughing my ass off. I mean, on some of these questions these guys are asking, it's like, seriously? People just don't get it because computers relatively are new to society.
Eric, in terms of OPSEC, are there technologies that you really like and to improve your OPSEC, such as a VPN perhaps, or other kinds of monitoring services that you can subscribe to?
Yeah, so the first one is the most obvious, but to me, one of the most effective ones is have a default VPN that's running on every device. So go in and just have that. So this way, when you're on wireless, you're good. Other big thing is any apps you're not using, get them off your phone. And this is one that's counterintuitive. If you're going to use an app and there's a free and a paid version, always go the paid. Yeah. Because the paid version, you're paying for the service, so there's no monitoring. With the free services, you're basically giving them permission to monitor your location, pictures, and others to do target marketing. And then the third big one is endpoint security, antivirus. It's not perfect. You got to have it on cell phones. You got to have it on Macs. People think it's just a PC issue, but it's starting to spread to these other devices.
That's a good point. So what else have you been up to? Any more questions on the, I think the celebrity security service is outstanding, Eric. Again, you're living my dream. It's great.
All of us.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, the other one I think is super cool, and this is more corporate focused, but we're doing a virtual CISO service, because what I've realized is you have all these companies these really big companies that are spending tons of money and tons of resources, and they're doing silly things like having servers visible from the internet, missing patches with unencrypted data. And what I realized is it's because they don't really understand the role of a chief information security officer. Most companies have no idea how to build a strategic plan. So what we do is companies hire us as their virtual CISO. We go in for 9 to 12 months, set up their security dashboard, set up their metrics, train their CISO so they're doing things correctly. And then this way they'll have better visibility. So these types of boneheaded things that are happening can start to be minimized and they'll have better visibility into it.
So do you actually send the people on site to work for those 9 to 12 months?
Yes. So I have a different group of folks. I have one group that works with the celebrities. I have another group that works with the executives. And basically, I've developed a methodology because I was a CISO since 1995 when it really wasn't cool and nobody liked you. Back then, I could relate to the opening comment about not having any friends right back then. But I built a lot of methodologies and systems and metrics. So what I do is I have a team of guys that I train up, and then they'll go out to companies and implement that methodology, the metrics, the dashboard at the company. So this way the executives can get better visibility into what's going on in their company and make better decisions.
Yeah, because we've seen that service a few different ways. We've seen it as kind of an advisory role, a consultant, but having someone on site and then, you know, having a clear end to the engagement where there's a training component to that, I would imagine, is interesting.
I mean, that's what we're doing is because you have these really smart, brilliant people that are given the title of CISO, but they're in an unfair spot. They really haven't been trained. The executives don't know what the heck they want. So we sort of come on, make sure the executives are comfortable, make sure the techies are there, get them trained up, basically teach them how to ride the bike, take the training wheels off, and then we leave and let them go on their way.
That's awesome.
Would it be fair to characterize that as a Cisco boot camp or a CISO mentoring program? Or is that
yes,
too much of a simplification?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good way of saying it where, we're basically going in and mentoring and helping these people understand. Because really a CISO, in my opinion, is a marriage counselor. You basically have the executives and you have the technical folks, and they hate each other. And they fight all the time, and mommy and daddy fights, and the kids are upset. So what a CISO really needs to do is basically be a counselor between those two groups to make both sides happy. And basically, it's because they speak different languages. So a good CISO needs to translate between business and technical.
Yeah. You can also be the good cop, bad cop thing that's really useful for the virtual CISO, because that means that when you step in, you can make all the hard decisions and let the person who's permanent inside the political realm, kind of be the good cop and say, well, they said we have to do it this way, so we have to do it this way. And then you get good stuff adopted like that.
Exactly. That was just 2 weeks ago. We were in a meeting and a CEO was just being a jerk. So I basically looked at him and said, stop being a dick. Yeah. And everyone sort of stopped and looked at me. I'm like, listen, I know I'm gone in 2 months, so I can say anything I want. Right. And they all sort of laughed, but appreciated it.
Absolutely.
And it's sometimes you need that person to have that candor with people to kind of call them out, make everyone aware of it. Like, oh, we were all thinking that, but no one wanted to really say it. And the CEO probably was behaving that way for a reason, right? To get a point across, and it was calculated as well. So
exactly, you get to say the things that no one else wants to say.
Yeah,
more dream job stuff.
Of the consultant.
Do you ever find the CISO is in the wrong place, authority-wise, in the organization, and can you do anything about it? They don't have the authority to say no. In other words.
Exactly. Now that problem is being solved very quickly because normally you had CISOs buried under IT. They really didn't have any authority, and the CIO really didn't want to listen to them. But the best thing that ever happened is when breaches occur, the CISO or whoever's in charge of security gets fired. So what happened over the last 2 or 3 years is you had all these CIOs getting fired because security was under them, and now nobody wants security. So now they're like, hell, I don't want that shit. You take it. You take it. So now the good news is in the last probably 9 months, we've really seen companies letting CISOs be equal to the CIO and report directly to the board of directors. Because if you're not reporting directly to the board of directors, if you're not an equal with the CIO, you're going to lose and you're basically going to get fired when the next breach happens.
Awesome. That is awesome.
I don't like that scenario either. Because I think everyone's going to have a breach, and I think that you learn a lot from your failures or mistakes, and that's an opportunity to learn and grow. I don't understand sometimes why. I mean, I understand sometimes why, but I wish it wouldn't happen that sometimes the CISO gets fired.
You know, Paul, I was just thinking that, and Eric, what you just said was probably the best career advice for a person that's approaching a CISO role that they could ever have. If they go into an interview and find out they report to the CIO, don't take that job.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. And then the other big thing you want to do, which is, Paul, exactly what you said, is the problem today is we all know in IT, there's the 5 nines, 99.99% uptime availability is the metric. Well, the problem in security today is the metric is if we don't have a breach, you're doing your job, because executives don't understand how often you're being attacked. The best advice I can give anyone, including a CISO, is start telling your execs on a weekly basis the number of attempted attacks. Tell them how many times you're attacked and you're stopping it, and that changes everything. Because if you go to a CEO and you tell them that we stopped 8,000 attacks this week, and now you have a breach, they look at it completely differently.
I love that your story hasn't changed and you've stayed true, because so many years ago, I remember getting the same advice from you. And you were telling the class that I don't remember which one it was, but you're telling the class, look, if you want to justify your security program, start with something very basic. Go to your firewall, look at the logs, count how many dropped packets that has, and go report that number and say, this month we blocked this many potential attacks on our firewalls.
I was going to say,
I'll never forget that you told me that, Eric. It's pretty funny.
That is one of the easiest metrics to freaking report. I mean, it's like, just look at the IPS logs or all the firewall logs, just like Paul said. It's like, there it is. There's 20,000 blocks. Done.
Right. And Eric comes full circle, and he's still the same advice, just tuned for today. You got to show them what attacks you're blocking, right? In whatever system you have.
And the scary thing is, I talk to a lot of CEOs of big companies, and I ask them, how many attempted attacks do you think your company has a week? And I shit you not, most of them say 3 or 4.
Yeah.
They just have no idea how bad the problem is.
Right. Yeah, it's so, and that brings up important metrics. Are there recommendations you have for people for metrics? And that's probably one of the most popular questions that we get. How do you report to your board security metrics that can justify your existence, that can help get new things approved?
To me, the one that I use today, and I'll tell you it's not perfect, but it is better than all the others, is what I just said, attempted attacks. Here's the problem. People want to make metrics so complicated.
Yeah.
If you have 15 or 20 metrics and you're creating these 30-page graphics and it takes you 3 hours to present it, nobody cares and nobody's listening. Remember, IT has one metric. IT has just one. Pick one metric, report on it, and get away all these fancy graphs. I don't know why security people think we have to present complicated graphs that nobody understands.
Right. And that's important for the audience that you're presenting to as well, for sure.
Yeah.
And it's
old advice. Keep it simple, right? Keep it simple.
Yeah, and I'll speak with chief security officers for state and local governments, and they're like, "Yeah, I was supposed to have a half an hour to speak, but I ended up with 5 minutes to speak." So take Eric's advice and present something very simple, because sometimes in those environments, until you've built up to a certain point, right, you've only maybe got 5 minutes.
I think they learned it from law enforcement too. It was like the people learned that you could do all these weird, colorful charts and show the amount of this crime and that crime, and they get real specific into it. And they really should just keep it simple. I like the advice.
Well, I think it also comes back to the translation issue. I mean, Eric said it right. That CISO's job is translating between business language and technical language. So if you're doing a presentation and you're bringing technical language into that presentation with the business audience, you're making a big mistake.
Exactly. And one thing I always tell CISOs is, before you present to the executive board, take your presentation home and present it to your kids and wife.
Yep.
And if they have no freaking clue what you're talking about, either will the execs. You can't have any technical terms. It's got to be simple, basic, and sweet. And most of my presentations are less than 5 minutes. And CISOs laughed because I had a CISO I was working with, and he did a 90-minute presentation and didn't get his budget approved. I did a 7-minute presentation and got a $35 million budget approved. You keep it simple and just give the facts to the execs.
Yeah, because I think as technical folks too, what we may think is simplified for an audience outside of our field is still really not until you bring it to someone outside of the field, right? I think as technical folks, we bring it up a lot of levels, but not far enough.
I saw a board presentation a few weeks ago, and the guy had something like 90 slides. I mean, he had like 20 minutes allocated, 90 slides. Every one of them was this massive spreadsheet showing all these little minutia. Well, what happened was he's trying to talk about something simple. People are looking at the minutia, and somebody's going, in cell AA75 there, I see the number 63.94073. What does that mean exactly? And he's like, oh, let's just not get bogged down in the weeds. And I was like, did you just say don't get bogged down in the weeds and you got 90 slides? Like, you started below the weeds. You're in the jungle. There are snakes in your clothes. You have a problem. I just don't get it. I like the thing. We tell forensics people that all the time. Yeah. Take this home to your wife, your kids, the poor, miserable victims that live around you. And if they can't understand it, grab people in the airport on the street and say, let me tell you about this case. And if you can't in 5 minutes tell that person and they walk away going, yeah, I got it, you're going to blow it. Because if you can't do that, you should not be trying to testify. You should not be trying. And a board is the exact same situation. If you can't gel that down to something some monkeys can understand and walk away going, yeah, I think he was guilty. I mean, you're going to lose. And when you're 94 slides of spreadsheet data, you're going to get in trouble.
Eric, when you're working with CISOs and coaching them, what advice do you have on enabling them to choose the right security solution? You know, we have other shows on the network that talk all about all the different vendors in our space, but how do you choose the right solution?
So first thing I always do is remove the product and look at what is the problem you're trying to solve and ask yourself, is that the highest priority problem? Because I see this now, I'm not trying to trash these companies, but I see this now where I go into clients and they're like, Eric, we got to buy this new AI solution. And I'm like, well, why? Well, it's got AI. I'm like, well, what problem are you trying to solve? And they're like, but it's got AI, man. It's cool shit. I'm like, listen, that doesn't matter. So to me, take the product and the vendor away and ask yourself, what is your highest priority problem and what is the best way to solve it? And then once you figure that out, then and only then start looking at solutions. But here's the trick. Create a requirements list, and products that don't meet every requirement, take off the list. Because that's the other thing is I see companies, I saw a client buy a SIM. They spent $300,000 on the SIM, and it didn't support 30% of the applications they had in their environment. I'm like, why would you have bought that? They just didn't do their homework. So do the homework, figure out the problem, get a clear list of requirements, and then and only then start looking at vendors.
Well, my problem is today, Eric, I don't have AI, and I really want AI. I need to solve that problem.
That's the problem we want to solve. Right. We don't have AI.
Don't have AI.
And we want it. We want it now.
But dude, you do have AI. Don't you have an iPhone? Alexa, she's
That's
AI,
true.
right?
Don't say that. Don't say that word.
That's true.
I want a solution that's buzzword compliant, please.
Exactly.
How do you balance?
I want to win at buzzword bingo.
Eric, how do you balance, speaking of products, I mean, a lot of things we do here at Security Weekly, we have some of the expertise, in-house. We'll use open source solutions. Cloud hosting is really cheap. Sometimes we even throw it on, a server that Doug might have laying around or someone has got laying around, and we'll put it on there. It's open source. How do you balance those types of projects with the ones that are commercial products? In what space does open source software and projects that surround them have in the enterprise security teams today?
It's slowly making some traction, but the fundamental problem with open source is in most cases there's not support, and this might sound crazy, especially I'm in a law firm right now doing some work, but the number one pushback from corporations with open sources, there's nobody to sue. If something goes wrong and there's a problem or an issue, there's nobody who's liable to be able to cover it. But here's the interesting thing. If you go back and look at companies, and I tell my clients this all the time, listen, what vendor have you actually sued over the last 10 years. I said, you're not going to do it. I mean, vendors aren't liable. They have very good user agreements in place. It's not going to happen. And most of them are going, that's a good point. And now that budgets are getting tighter, most of them now in the last probably 18 to 24 months, I'm seeing them more open to an open source solution. Also, a lot more cloud. Cloud used to be viewed as evil in the security space. And now it's probably the other extreme. Now almost everyone's moving to the cloud so quickly. Here's the problem, though. You can outsource functionality. You can even outsource IT, but you can't outsource liability. So if you're giving your data to a cloud provider, you're still the one that's going to be liable if they screw it up. So what I always tell clients today is, I'm cool with open source, I'm cool with cloud, but when it comes to client information and critical data, that's got to be either a private cloud or internal servers. You got to be super careful with giving that out to the world.
Well, and I think that support is sometimes an overloaded term, and what people really mean is product management, that a company is a commercial vendor, is to have someone who's working with customers to implement the features you need, and not just someone who's going to implement features because they're cool or fun. Do you run into that as well?
Absolutely. It's, will the product keep up with what we want? And also, when problems and issues are found, will they patch it in a timely manner?
Right.
And the interesting thing is, I'm finding a lot of big clients, they actually like open source, because if they're now the biggest customer for that small open source software company, that company is going to do anything they want. They're going to put any feature, any technology. And I'll tell you, Microsoft is not going to do that for you. So I see a lot of these bigger companies, they'd rather throw their money at the smaller players because they got a lot more responsiveness than these really big IT giants.
And then with respects to moving to the cloud, it is happening quickly, and I think that's leaving us very vulnerable to attacks. I mean, we even experienced an incident here at Security Weekly as well. That rush to the cloud without the proper controls is a huge problem today, no?
Absolutely. It goes back to what we were saying earlier, where people just assume everything's secure. We assume that Facebook is secure, and everybody assumes the cloud is secure. When I talk to folks and talk to companies going, you realize there's not really any security, any protection. They're like, oh, no, of course it's secure. And I'm like, oh, not really. So people just, functionality drives, security follows, and people don't ask enough questions. So one of the other things I push really, really hard is ask more questions. Don't make assumptions. Ask, how do you protect my data? Where is my data stored? And the other big thing with the cloud is co-location. If your data is on the same server with somebody else's data and they're doing criminal activity, and that server is potentially seized by law enforcement, you could potentially have discovery issues that pop up pretty quickly.
Yeah, we're actually just covering a cloud security provider that offers encryption in various ways. And there's a few of them in that space now, largely for the reasons that Eric mentioned, right?
Yeah. But the key thing there, I would say, is encryption doesn't mean anything if you're not protecting and controlling the key. Look at what happened with Marriott, where all their data was encrypted and they stored the keys on the same server. So you got to be careful. To me, encryption is probably one of the most dangerous terms out there. If the key is not stored and protected correctly, then all bets are off.
But it's quantum encryption, Eric. So therefore, it's at the next level.
I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy.
It's AI. It's AI quantum encryption.
So
okay, as long as you have two buzzwords in there, we're good, man.
That's right.
Sold. I'll take 7.
But Eric just nailed it, though. The I think probably the single largest problem in the security industry today is key management, and we still haven't really solved it. There's been attempts to solve it, but key exchange with public-private key cryptography is actually happening, but key management is a huge issue.
It wasn't that long ago. If I brought up that I wanted to manage my own keys on somebody else's system, they looked at me like I had two heads.
No,
they weren't even sure why I wanted encrypted.
Eric, do you see a lot of larger organizations moving towards serverless and containers, or are they still holding back, or are they building their own infrastructure rather than pushing these newer technologies all out into the cloud?
I know the big thing I'm seeing with a lot of these companies is they do not want to be in the IT security business.
Mm-hmm.
They want to go in. Law firms want to do law. Doctors want to do whatever doctors do. Financial services. So what they're realizing is, why do we have all this overhead where we're going in and managing and buying all these servers? They basically want to outsource it very, very quickly, very, very fast. Now, what's interesting is, I don't think they really understand or know the technology enough to ask for containers or things like that. But that's what I see a lot of these cloud providers doing as a way to put the security in place, but allow multiple clients to be on the same physical server to maximize resources.
And containers are just more scaling. I mean, they're just another way of scaling things up, which is what people really want. They want the convenience of scalability by saying, I need what I need when I need it. And when I need more, I want to be able to get it, and I don't want to have to call and order new equipment and tear all the racks out and put new stuff in. So containers just gives you even more ability to control that mysterious object that you have out there, whether it's a piece of hardware, it's a cloud-based server, or it's a container.
But all this has a cost too, and just because it's hosted in the cloud or it's a SaaS solution, what I've found, at least on a smaller scale, is that the more services that you get that are charging you X amount of dollars per user, while I'm outsourcing the security of it all, that cost starts to really add up. And it's every month because they're all subscriptions. And when you total them up, you could almost break your budget that way. Or does that, in a larger company, it's still cheaper to host a lot of things in the cloud?
What I'm seeing with most of my clients is when they push everything to the cloud, it's almost a break even. So they're not saving a lot, but they're not spending a lot more. But here's the thing they love: predictable monthly expenses. Because if you're running your own data center, servers can fail, systems, I mean, you have no predictability. But if you're outsourcing it, you're paying a set amount per user, and that's predictable. And now you can go in and budget for that and get much more predictable profit margins as opposed to trying to run it in-house. So that's what the big companies really like, is the predictability of the outsourcing.
Yeah. No, I agree that a lot of times once you have done a lot of the migrations that you're at a break-even point, right? At that, because storage and you're paying for CPU and storage and bandwidth in and bandwidth out adds up.
I tell people you're just trading one cost for a different cost, but the difference to me is that when you buy an asset and it's a physical thing, getting out from under that asset's a very different animal than scaling something up and down. And that's the big sales pitch from the cloud or from any sort of hosted provider like that is being able to scale on the fly. So I need more. Okay, here's more. We need less. Let's reduce.
Yeah.
Well, not only that, you lose all the hassles associated with managing the assets as well. Yeah, which is, it's a pretty massive gain. But you're also outsourcing personnel, obviously, because you're not needing the same amount of people to manage it. And that's always becomes a political game with any organization.
But yeah, always when you're computing costs for that, don't forget to compute your HVAC and your electricity and all this stuff. Because I just did one of those, and they were talking about how they didn't really save anything. And I was like, but nothing on here shows the cost of electricity and HVAC that you were spending, because that came out of a different pot of money. And I was like, and it was a big number. When I pulled that number up, I was like, "Look at this thing!" I mean, I was like, you're not paying that now. You got to turn all those air conditioning units off because you turned all that stuff's gone.
Yeah, I mean, a medium-sized data center is going to be on the order of 400 million watts, watt hours. I mean, that's real money, right? And I pulled that number totally out of my. No, I didn't. Actually, I pulled that number from some past experience.
That was awesome. That was impressive, Joe. I'm impressed.
We totally bought it.
I wasn't even going to fact check it. I'm like, Joff sounds like he knows exactly what he's talking about, so I'm going with it.
If it had been an AI generated number, I would get my checkbook out right now. I'd be like ordering 5.
Eric, in terms of working with enterprises today, I've noticed a big trend in VPN technology has really come a long way. Are you seeing that trend as well? Are people abandoning kind of the traditional VPNs for some of these newer, what is it, SDP, SD-WAN and those kind of technologies?
Yeah, because the big driver that's coming out is protection of data in transit.
Yeah.
I'm seeing with a lot of clients, that's becoming a requirement that if I'm working with any customer, if you're going to have access to my data, you need to make sure that you're protecting it in transit. And VPNs work okay, but they still require the user to set up and tear down. So these ideas of either having baked in IPsec, like point-to-point tunnels with Microsoft solutions, or having it almost built into the infrastructure of the hardware is definitely the new trend. Now, it once again adds a huge expense when you start rolling that out, but it solves a ton of issues because now all the data is encrypted. But here's the thing, though. You need to look at what your internal security is. We had a client that their IT department went in and rolled out, I think it was like $800,000 solution to do all point-to-point encryption. And all of a sudden, all the security infrastructure internally wasn't working because they didn't have on-the-fly encryption. So the IDS couldn't decrypt the firewalls, and basically all of their security internally was totally blind. So there's sort of a balance there where having some built-in embedded encryption to protect your data is important, but you need to think through it to make sure you're not blinding your current infrastructure.
Yeah, it's a great point. We covered some hardware vendors that it's the crypto's built onto the Ethernet cards. I've seen a few of them at various shows, right? And I think it's popular in the financial industry because it doesn't introduce any latency. They're very high performance, right? But what I hear you saying, Eric, is those are for very specific applications, not necessarily to try and roll it out through your entire infrastructure. It introduces other problems.
It goes back to where we were a few minutes ago. What is the problem you're trying to solve? And is it the highest priority? Because I'm dealing with a client now where they want to put an HD WAN, and I'm like, well, what problem are we trying to solve? And it's like, it doesn't matter what the question is. They already know the answer. Like they just want it because it's cool, but there's not really a specific problem. So we often, with this cool technology, can sometimes get caught up in doing things for the wrong reason.
Right. Yeah, and I think go ahead, Lee.
Have you run into cases where they're trying to solve a problem and the answer is good as long as it comes from their pre-selected vendor? Like if it rhymes with Wisco, we got it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of those with these bigger companies where they're sort of in bed with one vendor. And that's one of the things where when you're doing road mapping and you're going in and putting together your strategic plan, you shouldn't have any product vendors in the room. You should be doing that independently and seeing where your real problems are. Because if you hire a vendor, and that's one thing, and I lose a lot of money, but I will not resell any technology. I've got a lot of sweet deals from these companies. I'm like, listen, that just puts me in a conflict of interest. If I know that if I recommend a Wisco or a Hoopersoft solution, I'm going to get a kickback. That's going to put me in a bad spot, so I won't do that. But yeah, if your vendor who's recommending a roadmap also is selling products, grab small children and run, do not walk to the nearest exit.
Yeah,
that's kind of the Latvian hooker and his marriage counselor scenario, I think.
And so when we talk about MDMs, I've seen some implementations, Eric, that it was almost seamless to the end users and they've adopted it. I've seen other ones where they're like literally outside the IT office with pitchforks or even lined up at the Apple store because all their phones aren't working and they can't get support from IT. And they're like in the Apple store and all the users are so frustrated. They're getting another device, putting the software on a tablet or whatever, and not putting it on their phones. Well, how do we find this happy medium when it comes to mobile device management?
Yeah, I mean, my general rule is if you're getting to the point where you need to put bulletproof vests in your budget because you're afraid of your staff, you're probably not doing security correctly.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of transparency, and I know you can't get there perfectly, but where we talked about in the beginning of the show, with a lot of my clients, that's the only option. If I don't give them a transparent solution, if anything interrupts or bothers them, they're going to say no. And I think right now there's a lot of security people that think security is so important that it's okay to interrupt the business. It's okay to cause harm. And the number one rule I live by in security is if security negatively impacts the business, security is wrong. Yeah. So I'm a fan of these transparent solutions. They might only be 80%, because I had a client going, but Eric, if we do this highly disruptive one that pisses everybody off, we get a 10% increase in security. And I said, yeah, but you get a 30% decrease in lifespan. That's not a good trade-off for me. So
Right. Yeah, and these are business decisions that I think as technologists, we really have to take those into account. And I love the numbers you presented. Like, we're 80% of the way there. and we could really piss off our users with going to 90%, but 80%.
And there's one other tenet that's really important there, which is that if people don't buy into the security solution will likely fail.
Yeah, or any technology solution.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
my grandfather, when he bought a new car, the first thing he did was take a knife and cut the safety belts out because he thought they were useless and annoying. And I mean, so you can pass all the laws you want, but he wasn't going to wear those safety belts because he didn't believe that was going to save him in an accident, and he wanted to be able to get out of the vehicle real quick. Mm-hmm. And I mean, if your users don't buy it, just like you're saying about the celebrities, if they don't buy it, they're going to go around it.
Yeah.
They're going to find every possible way because they're saying this is stupid. It's like, oh, the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit, that's stupid. I'm going to drive 80. So if you don't buy it, then it's just, you can put up all the signs you want. You can write citations all you want. And people are still going to drive 80 miles an hour because they haven't bought.
That's straight out of the Phoenix Project, right? I mean, it always takes me back to that book. And, I'd actually like to ask Eric this question. One of the things that I think is probably critical in the CISO training service is for them to learn the business, right, as the very first order of what they're doing. Because if they're not, and they're not aligned with the business, then they're not going to be there long.
Exactly, because remember, except in some limited nonprofits, but even they have to make money. In any company that has to draw a profit, there's always acceptable risk. And this is one that I'll tell you, it's a hard one for me, and it's a hard one for security folks, is paying the ransom with ransomware. There's a lot of these companies where they get hit with ransomware, they don't have proper backups, and the best business solution is actually to pay the ransom. They're going to get up and running a lot quicker now. If you pay the ransom, you better make sure you're never going to have to pay it again.
Yep.
And you better make sure that it's clean. But I was working with a client where, I mean, the security team hated me because they're like, Eric, how could you say that they should pay the ransom? I'm like, listen, it's a business decision. You guys don't have backups. You're going to be down for 3 weeks, and you're going to lose $100 million. Pay the $50,000 and move on.
But fix the
that's
problem.
Tough pill for security professionals to swallow because it's a dent to their pride, and that's all of us would take that difficult. But you're exactly right; it's totally a business decision.
And that's part of having a plan. So what Eric said early on was that you've got to sit down and you got to develop these strategies, you got to develop these plans. And if you don't have that plan, when the ransomware hits, you're just going to run in circles flapping your arms for a while. And if you have a plan, you can make that sound decision and say, should we pay the ransom? Should we not pay the ransom? And it's not everybody sitting on the phone screaming at 3 o'clock in the morning. And
Right. I'm reminded of something that was told to me when I was first starting out, and that is, at this company, we hire really smart people to solve problems. Don't be the problem they solve.
That's greatly.
Because they will. Then security fail.
Eric,
or shadow IT. Go ahead.
Eric, are there conferences you're going to be speaking at, or books that you've just published that you want to make our audience aware of?
Appreciate that. So it's probably about 9 months old, but Online Danger. And this was a different book. This book was written for non-technical. So this was written for parents, teachers, executives to really understand the true dangers that are out there. And if you go to onlinedanger.com, I have a free chapter. And then I also have a bunch of ebooks that we just published on CISO and insider threat and threat hunting that you can also download for free at secureanchor.com.
Awesome. Eric, I don't think haven't been on the show in some time, and we may not have asked you 5 questions. So we're going to ask you the Security Weekly 5 questions. You ready?
Let's do it.
3 words to describe yourself.
Crazy motherfucker.
If you were a serial killer,
hell yeah,
what would be your weapon of choice?
A wood chipper.
If you wrote a book about yourself, what would the title be? Now, Eric, before you answer this, in my mind, when I get to this 3rd question, I combine answers 1 and 2 for the answer for number 3. So I'm just throwing that out there as an option.
I have to combine them?
No, you don't have to, but okay. I always do in my head, and yours is really funny.
Okay. Because I think my book title is even better. My book title would be Size Doesn't Matter.
Fantastic. Which brings us to question 4. In the popular game of Ask Krabby Grabby, do you prefer to go first or second?
Definitely first.
Choose 2. Now, you work with a lot of celebrities. And this question is, choose 2 celebrities to be your parents.
Donald Trump and Nancy Pelosi.
Oh my God! I hate to tell you this, you're not going to be pretty.
Wow.
And that's how you get to crazy motherfucking wood chippers.
Wood chipper serial killers.
Classic.
Dr. Eric Cole, thank you so much for coming back on Paul's Security Weekly.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much, guys. It's awesome.
Thank you. With that, we'll take a short break. Come back with a technical segment from our very own Mr. Joff Fire. Stay tuned.